She was a respected doctor, a woman known for her intelligence, kindness, and dedication to her work. But what was supposed to be a peaceful stay at an upscale hotel turned into a nightmare. When Maria Luisa Cedeno was found brutally murdered in her room, the case sent shockwaves through Costa Rica. Who could have committed such a horrific act? And what secrets would the investigation uncover? Welcome back to Chilling Fireside Stories, where we shine a light on true crime cases that deserve to be heard. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss an episode. Before I begin, please note that this case contains details that may be distressing to some viewers. Viewer discretion is strongly advised. I always aim to tell these stories with the utmost respect for the victims and their families. Now grab a warm drink and let's begin. Maria Luisa Cedeno was a highly accomplished anesthesiologist, serving as the head of the Department of Anesthesiology and Recovery at Shima Hospital in Escazú. At 43, she specialized in pain management and anesthesia, helping patients through some of the most challenging moments of their lives. Her colleagues described her as brilliant and compassionate, someone who truly cared about her patients' well-being. Beyond her career, Maria Luisa was a vibrant person who loved traveling, spending time with family and enjoying life. She had built a reputation of excellence and her future seemed full of promise. On July 18, 2020, Maria Luisa Cedeno arrived at Hotel La Mansion Inn in Manuel Antonio, a lovely area within the Costa Rican province of Puntarenas. She was accompanied by her beloved dog Mafalda, who went everywhere with her and was treated like her own daughter. Maria Luisa's first day in this serene location went as expected. She enjoyed the beach, had lunch at a local restaurant, and even sipped a little wine, embracing the vacationer's routine. However, the next day took a dark turn. At precisely 4:30 p.m., Maria Luisa requested a bottle of wine, some mineral water, and 2 glasses to be delivered to her room. It was peculiar because she hadn't mentioned expecting any visitors, and everyone believed she wanted some time alone. Throughout that evening and into the next day, there were no signs of activity from her room. On July 20th, the hotel staff tried to contact her, but there was no response. A staff member had previously conversed with Maria Luisa, learning she lived alone after recently separating from her partner. She confided that she wasn't feeling well and was traveling with only her little dog Mafalda. The pandemic had taken a toll on her mental health and she just needed some rest. Concerned for her well-being, the hotel staff decided to conduct a routine check of her room. They found the front door locked from the inside, so they opted to access the room through the door leading to the inner courtyard. This room, designed for guests with pets, had an additional exit. Upon approaching the half-open door, the staff was met with a horrific smell and immediately noticed blood stains in various parts of the room. Mafalda, her loyal companion, was alive but visibly shaken, lying in a corner and trembling with fear. On the bed lay the lifeless body of Maria Luisa, wrapped in a sheet. She was discovered under tragic circumstances. Her sudden and violent death left Costa Rica and her family in shock. Friends described her as a strong, intelligent, and beautiful woman who loved to travel both within Costa Rica and abroad. Her impeccable reputation made the news of her death even more devastating. Who could have wanted to harm someone like Maria Luisa? The mystery began the moment her body was discovered. The crime scene was perplexing, not only due to the brutality she faced but also because of the unusual access to her hotel room. In most hotels worldwide, including this one, magnetic key cards track room access, registering each entry along with the specific key code used. This allows hotels to determine whether a guest or an employee accessed a room. In the case of Maria Luisa's murder, there were no records of any keys being used that didn't belong to her. The records showed that she had entered her room the previous evening, and no one else had accessed it since. However, there was a sliding glass door at the back that could have provided entry. This door was always locked from the inside, so only a guest could have opened it and left it unlocked. Since it was a sliding door not equipped with a magnetic key system, there were no records of any entry through the courtyard. It is possible that Maria Luisa let someone in through this door or left it unlocked, allowing someone to enter and commit the crime. The door was found ajar when the hotel staff arrived, making it likely that someone had entered her room through the courtyard, murdered her and left the same way. After discovering Maria Luisa's body, the hotel staff immediately called the police. Upon examining the crime scene, it was evident that Maria Luisa Cedeno had met a tragic end. Her body exhibited significant harm, suggesting that she had suffered greatly at the hands of her attacker. Forensic experts promptly arrived to gather evidence, establish the cause of death and examine every detail to identify the perpetrator. Given the severity of the situation, the authorities advised the Cedeno family to hold a closed-casket funeral. The autopsy revealed that Maria Luisa had endured significant trauma, including bite marks on her body and 2 broken fingernails, indicating she had tried to defend herself. Another detail from the autopsy suggested that the perpetrator had washed her body. After the incident, Maria Luisa was moved to the bathroom, where her body was washed, dried, wrapped in a sheet and placed back on the bed. This was exactly how the hotel staff later found her. Despite the perpetrator's attempts to clean up, it was nearly impossible to hide all traces of the crime. Blood was found throughout the room, on the floor, walls, curtains and bed, further highlighting the brutality of the attack. Experts took photographs and collected as much physical evidence as possible. The body was sent for an autopsy, and the police began questioning hotel staff and guests who might have heard anything. Despite the evidence suggesting Maria Luisa must have screamed and her dog Mafalda would have been barking, no one reported hearing any disturbances throughout the night. Although the hotel was almost empty due to the pandemic, a few staff members were still working, and the hotel's owner, Harry Bodden, lived there with his husband, Danilo. Additionally, some trusted friends were allowed to stay at the hotel due to financial difficulties, as it was never crowded during the pandemic. In Maria Luisa's room, they found the bottle of wine and 2 glasses she had ordered from room service. Upon examining her mobile phone, it was discovered that she had sent a photo of the 2 glasses to a friend but mentioned nothing about expecting anyone. She also sent an audio message to the same friend, expressing how much she enjoyed the hotel. In the message, Maria Luisa shared how well she and Mafalda were treated, mentioning the all-inclusive package she had paid for and how they brought her everything she desired. The hotel where Maria Luisa Cedeno was staying was somewhat run down and understaffed. The same girl who served coffee also took care of the hotel grounds, but despite this, Maria Luisa found the place charming and enjoyed her stay. When officers questioned Maria Luisa's friends and relatives to find out if she had any known enemies, they discovered that she often ordered 2 glasses, even when she was alone. She would pour alcohol into one glass and water into the other. This habit confirmed that she was likely alone and not expecting anyone on the night of the attack. Returning to the initial hypothesis, it seemed plausible that the attacker had seen Maria Luisa at the hotel, noticed the back door was open and decided to attack her. However, the sheer brutality of the crime suggested that the attacker harbored deep-seated hatred or anger toward her, which was difficult to explain in such a scenario. It seemed more likely that this was a murder committed by someone who knew Maria Luisa and wanted to make her suffer. Despite this, there was no evidence to suggest she was with anyone or had met someone. The autopsy confirmed that Maria Luisa had suffered severe trauma, with signs of strangulation and bruises on her body. Based on the autopsy findings and interviews with relatives, friends, and hotel guests, the authorities concluded that the attack likely involved more than one person. Since no one heard Maria Luisa scream, they suggested that at least 2 attackers had subdued her in a way that kept her completely under control. There was even speculation of a 3rd person involved, as Maria Luisa had endured significant harm. According to this theory, Maria Luisa was overpowered by 2 attackers while a 3rd person inflicted harm. The lack of signs indicating she had been restrained supported this idea. Officers also suggested that the attackers might have used something to muffle her cries. The cause of death was determined to be a traumatic brain injury, possibly resulting from a severe blow to the head or a hard fall. The attack on Maria Luisa was tragic, senseless, and without apparent motive. Finding the first suspect did not take long. Teodoro Herrera Martinez, an exotic dancer who worked in nightclubs and was staying at the hotel, was found with multiple fresh wounds resembling scratches from someone defending themselves. His footprints matched those found at the crime scene, as well as his saliva on one of the beverage cans in the room where Dr. Cedeno was staying. A second suspect, Luis Carlos Miranda, was arrested after a hotel guard reported seeing him with Herrera. Further tests revealed that his dental records matched the bite marks found on Maria Luisa's body. Some hotel staff testified that they had seen Maria Luisa talking with Luis Carlos and on one occasion with Herrera. However, these interactions seemed casual, and it didn't appear that they were friends or knew each other well. Luis Carlos and Teodoro Herrera were the two friends whom the hotel owner, Harry Bodden, had allowed to stay at the hotel due to their financial difficulties during the pandemic. With matching footprints and bite marks from these two suspects, the police's next logical step was to question Harry Bodden, the hotel owner, to gather more information. On the night of the murder, specifically on July 19, 2020, Harry Bodden and his husband were having dinner in their apartment inside the hotel, along with the two suspects. After dinner, the four men went to a private pool. Harry explained that the two suspects worked for him in exchange for living there. Luis Carlos handled the website's marketing while Herrera worked as a chef and bartender. Although Harry and the suspects were not close friends, they had started living in the hotel a year before the murder, and their interactions had gradually become more frequent, leading to a friendship among the four men. In August 2020, Harry Bodden cooperated and gave an interview, but he was soon arrested after two bite marks found on the victim's body matched his dental records. This discovery prompted the police to confiscate the phones of everyone arrested. They uncovered text messages between Luis Carlos and Harry that were quite compromising, involving unsettling fantasies. In these messages, Luis Carlos suggested to Harry that they involve a woman in their activities. This conversation occurred just a few days before the incident. The suspects claimed that these messages meant nothing and that they were just joking, but for the authorities this, along with the physical evidence, was enough to keep them in custody while they built the case. The only one who wasn't arrested was Harry's husband, as there was no evidence against him. No text messages, no fingerprints, and the bite marks didn't match those found on the victim's body. The defense argued that the bite marks found on the body were inconclusive and that none of them were actually involved in the murder. Despite this, 3 men were charged with the murder of Maria Luisa. Before the trial began, Harry Bodden's lawyer requested that his client be released and placed under house arrest for 2 reasons. First, because the pandemic was raging in the country and Harry, being 69 years old, was at high risk in prison. Second, he allegedly had trouble walking due to a recent knee surgery and had been using a cane for a long time. When the trial began, he even appeared in a wheelchair. Thanks to this request, he was granted house arrest and allowed to return to the hotel where he lived. He couldn't leave the premises but had everything he wanted while waiting for the trial, including staff service, restaurants, and a pool. On September 13, 2022, the public trial of the suspects began, and the testimonies against them were heard. The prosecution faced difficulties in proving Harry Bodden and Luis Carlos's involvement, despite the text messages and bite marks. The issue was that bite marks can't definitively prove who committed the murder. They can only exclude certain suspects. While all the hotel staff could be excluded, Harry and Luis Carlos could not. However, this didn't mean that the bite marks were a perfect match for their dental records, making them not strong enough evidence. When it came to Teodoro Herrera, the evidence against him was much stronger. There was a blood trail and wounds were found on his body, determined to have been inflicted by Maria Luisa as she tried to defend herself. Her blood was found under his fingernails and blood was also discovered on his shoes, watch and mobile phone, all of which were found in his room during the search. With this evidence, only Herrera could be convicted and he received 50 years in prison. However, Harry Bodden and Luis Carlos Miranda were acquitted due to a lack of physical evidence. Many believe that these 2 men were still involved in the murder, especially since the hotel's surveillance cameras mysteriously stopped working on the day of the murder, suggesting that someone tampered with them. Another person under suspicion was the hotel security guard, but like the other 2, he couldn't be arrested due to a lack of evidence. Strangely, after the murder, he left the country even though the police had requested his presence at the trial as a witness. There is still much about this case that raises questions about potential involvement by others. 2 guests reported that the power in the hotel went out for several hours on the night of the murder, possibly to shut off the surveillance cameras and disable the magnetic key cards. Investigators only searched the hotel owner's private office 9 days after the murder, which could have given him plenty of time to hide any evidence. Besides the text messages, the suspect's social media accounts were also analyzed, revealing conversations about fantasies that directly aligned with how Maria Luisa's body was discovered. In the eyes of the law, Harry Bodden and Luis Carlos Miranda are innocent. The only person still in prison for this murder is Herrera, who is awaiting a new trial to see if his sentence might be reduced. Although this case is technically solved, the Cedeno family believes there's more to it, some kind of cover-up or protection. They have even stated that the authorities returned Maria Luisa's bloody clothes to them, which must have been kept by the authorities as evidence in case something else came to light. While they are satisfied with Herrera's conviction, they are far from content with the acquittal of Harry Bodden and Luis Carlos Miranda. Maria Luisa's story is a heartbreaking reminder that even the safest spaces can hold unexpected dangers. Her loved ones continue to honor her memory, remembering her not for the tragedy, but for the remarkable life she lived. Maria Luisa Cedeno's story is one that must not be forgotten. She was a person who dedicated her life to helping others, and she deserved so much more. What do you think about this case? Do you believe justice was fully served? Let me know in the comments. And if you found this story important, please consider subscribing and turning on notifications so we can continue shining a light on stories that deserve to be heard. Until my next video, stay informed, stay safe, and look after your loved ones.